Welcome back to the polls. Now, you would have to get ready to pay a bit more when next you decide to fuel your car. That's because prices of petroleum products are seeing an upward adjustment across board at the pumps. It comes as the National Petroleum Authority, in a press statement, indicated its resolve to restore the price stabilization and recovery levies on petroleum products effective today. Well, some drivers are not taking lightly to this new increment at the pumps. They want government to reconsider its decision.
It's true. The fuel. You see, I'm using motorbike, and the first time when I buy 5 cedis, I can take it home. I can take it home and bring it back. But now 10 cedis, I won't reach anywhere. The fuel, it will finish. Just right now, I buy only 50 cedis before coming here. So why the fuel is too expensive now.
At times you can feel come job, you know, get money. So at times if you buy 10 cedi, if the price is normal, you can feel ready to go house. But right now they increase the petrol. If you buy 10 cedi, no will take you go house. So we are feeling this thing.
What can I say? Say we should board no so I who the board no so. And as a Ghanaian, I'm not thinking about myself. Media said you who name and meet me out. But farmers na aye duane go villages no. And on my coffee, and any idea ban. On bed, and about drivers in the bed.
Make a ban the Panichono on the or man, no man more wired in the do. Now, full no more to do. There's an passenger for no so now almost so fast.
Make say, a ban one tip petrol so mine. Because they say, taxi and fro. I'm sending board into your for taxi. It will be a trot or a number from a or mine. Yes, I did. Yes, we are.
Well, so you had some drivers there, obviously not happy about the decision. Our research desk has put together information to help you appreciate what this price stabilization recovery levy on petroleum products is all about and why government is reintroducing the levies at this time. Joining me now is Isaac Kofi J. He's with the research desk here at JoyNews. He joins us with a breakdown of the figures and what it should mean to you out there. So, Isaac, let's start off with the price stabilization levy. First of all, what is the rationale behind the stabilization levy?
Blessed, if you can hear me, the purpose of the price stabilization levy is to stabilize prices for consumers and pay for subsidies on premix fuel and residual fuel oil. So that's the purpose for the price stabilization levy.
So now that government is announcing that they'll be restoring the levy, what then happens to fuel prices after this decision?
Well, this simply means that all things being equal, the PSRL is expected to feature, on the price build-up list for the windows ahead, effective today. This will lead to a removal, of the pushing amount of 16 pesos on a liter of petrol, and then 14 pesos on a liter of diesel, and 14 pesos on a liter of LPG. Now, beyond external forces such as currency depreciation and changes in the price of gasoline, which have the tendency to affect the price of fuel at the pumps, there are also levies on the price build-up. So as of today, that is first, February 2022 window, there are about 12 taxes and margins applicable, on the price build-up as we speak now.
So let's talk about the expected revenue. We're expecting somewhere around 100.5 billion cedis. How significant will be the levy in terms of revenue mobilization?
So, Blessed, this year, total revenue for the price stabilization and recovery levy is pledged at 816.2 billion cedis in 2022. That's this year. Now, this is over 31% more than the projected, revised budget amount of 619 million cedis in 2021.
Well, it turns out that the drivers are not the only ones feeling the pinch of the increase in fuel prices. Some traders are already threatening to increase the price of their commodities in anticipation of an increase in transport fares. The Kumasi Institute for Technology, Energy and Environment is worried about government's decision to restore the price stabilization and recoveries levies on petroleum products at this time. Executive Director for the Institute, Ishmael Ejikum, says a rippling effect of the increase in fuel prices should be anticipated. He spoke on News Desk.
The 16 pesos, 14 pesos addition to what you pay per liter, addition to what you pay at the pump, apart from any other adjustment that may be coming from as a result of movements in the world market and exchange rate. So it's going to be an upward adjustment. I mean, it's just restoring to where we used to be before they decided to take those levies off for the 2-month period. Every consumer, including myself, would want to pay a lower price as much as possible. What I also know is that whenever any one of them is dropped, there's going to be a price to be paid by all of us. I mean, we were told that for the 2 months that the PSRL was suspended, it was like 50 million cedis a month. So that translates to over 100 million over the two months that it was suspended. So yes, we can advocate for removal of all levies and taxes, but there are consequences. For example, we were told in the MPA letter that the PSRL is actually specifically meant to subsidize premixed fuel and also the residual fuel oil. So what it means is that if it's not paid, government will have to find money somewhere to pay for those subsidies. So yes, I would want to pay less, but for any of the levies that has earmarked and dedicated to a particular purpose, if it's taken off, then it means government will have to find money to be paying and for the levy to be doing what it's doing. So I want to pay less, and I'm always happy to fight and say that the levies will, but under the circumstances, I don't know what the government options are.
Well, let's broaden this conversation here. On the Pulse, we are joined now by the head of price stabilization at the National Petroleum Authority, Abbas Ibrahim Tasunti. He's joining us via Zoom. We're grateful that you're joining us on the Pulse. Now, you have announced your intention, indicating why you would have to reverse and implement the levy. What are the factors accounting for the decision this time around?
Thank you very much. Let me first correct that I'm the head of pricing at NPA, not the price stabilization. Just as the previous speaker mentioned, there's a purpose for the price stabilization and recovery levy. Indeed, as per the Energy Sector Levies Act 899, 2015, the Section 5C clearly states that it's supposed to be used to pay for subsidies on premixed fuel and residual fuel oil, and also help to stabilize prices when it can be used. So what has been done over the past 3 months is the helping to stabilize prices for consumers. You are aware that because we've deregulated prices, and like the previous speaker said again, that even if you take out all of these taxes, there's a consequence. Another thing is that even with a full removal of these taxes or levies from the price, but that will not stop prices from moving up or down in response to changes on the world market and the exchange rate. So basically, you cannot stop the prices from moving, but the removal kind of was a cushion for consumers over that period that it was removed. Now, the second aspect of it being used to pay for subsidies on premixed fuel and residual fuel oil. If the levy is removed forever, then it means there will be no money in the account that is supposed to be used to pay for these products. And the supply of this product is also very important because the fisher folk rely on this for fishing, and also industries rely on residual fuel oil for production. So we look at what is in the account, and then based on what we see in the account and how long it can last, we advise governments technically. So what we did in October 2021 was that we saw that there was kind of some balance in the account which we could rely on to cushion consumers for a while. That's how come there was an initial removal for 2 months. And so that was what we did. Another month was requested. So now, looking at what we have in the account, if it is not brought back, we will not be able to raise revenue to pay for the subsidies that is accruing on premix fuel and residual fuel oil. So that is the reason why the deadline was 31st January. So once it has ended, as a regulator, we take that directive from the Ministry of Finance and Parliament as to which taxes and levies should be on petroleum products. So once we have not been given a directive to remove it from the price board up, we have to make sure it reflects in the formula, and that's how it has been restored.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It appears that the aim is to protect the consumers, but that's not working with or without the levy.
So like I explained, you cannot stop the movement of prices of petroleum products in a deregulated market. The only way one can stop movement of prices is to subsidize the product. So if you see the price of petroleum products stable for a longer period, it means that something is happening, which means the price is being subsidized. So since we deregulated in July 2015, you would notice that the price of fuel changes every 2 weeks in response to changes on the world market. So the fact that the prices were moving does not mean that nothing was done. So like in this typical scenario, the levy was removed from the formula for the month of November and December 2021 and January 2022. Consumers were not made to pay for this levy. So the fact that the prices moved doesn't mean that it didn't work. It worked. So the consumer was spared from paying the 16 pesos extra on petrol, for example. So the fact that prices moved doesn't mean that the intervention did not work.
But your concern should also be about the economy. Already, the main stakeholders in all of this, the drivers, are lamenting the decision that you're taking. Are you mindful of all of these concerns that are coming up?
So, as you are aware, the National Petroleum Authority is not the manager of the country's economy in terms of the fiscal policy decisions. We act on what we've been directed by Parliament. Levies and taxes, imposition of levies and taxes on petroleum products is done by government through Parliament. So for us, if Parliament has passed that a levy should reflect in the formula that is supposed to be used to set the price, we have to implement that. If there's a directive to us that the levy should go off, we would apply that accordingly. So it is not for us to decide what levy is on the product or not. So the management of the economy and the impact, I think the Ministry of Finance will handle that. So if they do the assessments and they think that the government can get revenue from elsewhere to pay for the subsidies for premix and RFO, and then we are directed to remove this levy, we will comply accordingly.
Peter Tekpe is also an analyst. He's joining us. But Abbas, just to take you on this, why is the NPA acting independently in this case when we know that you're concerned about the markets? Obviously, without consumption, the markets will not survive. So what's the priority for you in all of this?
So NPA as a regulator, we regulate not only prices, we regulate the entire petroleum downstream industry, ensuring that players comply with the rules and regulations of the industry. We also ensure that pricing is done in a fair manner. We do not determine the price. Like I mentioned, the price is based on changes on the world market and the exchange rate, and also locally the taxes that are imposed. And these taxes are not determined or defined by NPA. NPA only implements taxes in the formula as has been passed by the Parliament of Ghana. So if a levy or a tax has been passed by the Parliament of Ghana to be imposed on petroleum products, NPA cannot on its own decide that levy should not be collected.
I'm sorry,
Remember,
but you are an authority. That's why you are an authority, isn't it?
Yeah, so the authority, our mandate is not to impose taxes. Our mandate is to ensure, if you read the NPA Act, our mandate is to regulate the industry, importation, operations, safety, and all that, and ensure that products prices are set fairly in conformity with the formula. And that formula, like I said, one of the components of that formula is taxes and levies. These taxes and levies are not determined by the National Petroleum Authority. They are determined by government with approval by Parliament. So if the Parliament of Ghana, through any act, imposes any tax on petroleum products, NPA cannot on its own say that it is removing that tax from the price board. And therefore, that is why before we even removed the levy from the formula, we needed approval from government. So it is not for NPA to on its own. Our regulatory mandate does not include the imposition of taxes on petroleum products.
Just hold on for us briefly. Let's bring in Peter Tekpe as well. He's an economist. So what's your reading of all of this? And what are the likely implications for us as a nation?
Thank you very much. Just for that, I'm a policy analyst. It's unfortunate that the factors that influences the prices of the petroleum product at the pump are all not looking good. The price at the world market is going up. Exchange rate is also not looking, good. And then the taxes, which is the last one, unfortunately, the government too is constrained on revenue. So the impact, of course, of petroleum price increases on the economy is that it affects, every aspect of man's life. Once prices of petroleum product increases, we all know the impact that transport cost also goes up. And that is what is happening. And so there needs to be a deliberate government policy or a deliberate government, strategy to be able to alleviate the price increase. And I indicated the last time that the situation we find ourselves in now, the only option for government is to sacrifice at some level. The reason is that the prices of the petroleum at the world market, which is increasing, because government, the Oil Refinery is not refining our crude, and because it is profitable to sell on the international market, it means government revenue from this petroleum product will also go up. What it means is that government revenue then will increase. Once government revenue is increasing, then government can, sacrifice at that level in order to contain the cost at the pump. That's to say that if government cannot reduce taxes, if government cannot control the depreciation of the currency, the taxes which are controlled by government can decide to say, then let's sacrifice at some level. And that is the only option for government now.
You are a policy analyst. How liberal should it be at this point, knowing that there are likely implications for our economy?
Well, that is the difficult aspect, because government needs revenue. And so how liberal should it be? What it means is that, look, the people should be of concern to the government. And because government is presiding over the people, and anything that will affect the lives of the people, the economic life of the people, should be government concerned. That is why it is imperative on the part of government to say that let's sacrifice at some level, because anything that government will do at the end of the day will have impact on the revenue mobilization. That is why we sacrifice. That is the only option. Look, we have short term, we have medium term, we have term. There needs to be a strategy, because the industry is deregulated. The various marketers are in to make profit. So anything that you want to do that will reduce the price, it means that somebody has to reduce his margin of his profit, because there are some aspects of the cost that the marketer can do nothing about it. The taxes are not controlled by the marketer. The depreciation of the currency movement is also not controlled by the marketer. So the marketer is only looking at the cost build-up. The ones that he doesn't have control, there's nothing they can do. So if you want to reduce cost, they look at your margin. So if government also want to alleviate the plight of the citizenry, then what they can do is that they have to then sacrifice on some aspect of their revenue, which is either tax, especially to be able to help.
We'll talk about the regulator shortly. Fortunately, Abbas is still with us. Abbas, so here's the point. You claim that you're not on the side of the consumers nor government, but we know that you want to protect the market. The market is about the people. So how do we solve this problem, particularly when those on the streets out there are saying you need to address the concerns they have?
Like we said, we are the regulator. It would be wrong to say that the regulator is not concerned about the plight of the consumer. The regulator ultimately has the interest of the consumer at heart, and therefore that interest is what we protect. Secondly, we don't only protect the interest of the consumer, but we also have to protect the interest of the player. So we are a referee in this case. Remember that the removal of the levy in November and December, or even the removal for the past 3 months, was based on a request by the National Petroleum Authority. And like I said, it is because when we did our analysis of the collection of the levies over the past years, we realized that there could be some surplus which can be used to subsidize or cushion consumers, and that's what we've done. And indeed, this is not the first time MP has requested for the levy to be removed. Since December 2017, on several occasions throughout to early 2020, the levy has been removed on several occasions when we see that prices are rising. So something can be done, and that's what was done. But there's an extent to which government can intervene. Remember that this levy was introduced in January 2016 when the energy sector levies restructuring was done. It was done to, this levy was brought to address an issue we used to have when government was controlling or fixing prices. What was happening was that government set the prices, subsidizes the price, but there was no source of revenue to pay for these subsidies. Now, if you subsidize product and there's no source of revenue to pay for the subsidies, what happens is that now the supplier is constrained because government doesn't pay them. Remember, all of these suppliers import the products and they take letters of credit from banks, more or less loans from banks. So their inability to get the full amount of money they are supposed to get from the sale of the product means they cannot pay the banks, and then they cannot not also pay their suppliers. So it is going to lead to shortage of petroleum products. So as a regulator, our concern is to make sure that the product is available for the consumer to consume. Then we make sure that it is priced fairly. So in this case, we cannot say that because the price is rising, the supplier should be constrained, and therefore we end up not having the product. So we have to make sure there's a balance. And that's how come the extent to which government can subsidize using the price stabilization and recovery levy based on what's available in the farms was for 3 months. And that has been done. Originally, it was for 2 months and we requested for an extension. So we stretched it a little for another month, which ended yesterday. So the regulator is in the middle and making sure there's a balance. You cannot subsidize when you don't have a source of subsidy.
I guess it's fair to say that you don't have control over all of the factors influencing the pricing. The world market also comes to play here. So there's a need for us to know about the projection and how Ghanaians could plan towards that. What are the figures telling you on the world market, and what projections are you making as the NPA? Should we brace ourselves to pay more in the coming days?
So NPA does not project prices, but what we do is just like any other institution. We monitor the happenings on the world market, and then based on our analysis of what is happening on the world market, we are able to tell what is likely to happen, but we cannot tell specifically what will happen. But the general expectation is that the market, like Peter said, it doesn't look good. Unfortunately, there are several incidents or many things happening right now that are pushing prices upward. As you are aware, there's tension between Saudi and UAE and the Yemenis, which is causing supply concerns. And that's one of the things that is pushing up prices on the world market. The other thing is this tension between Ukraine and Russia. What this is leading to is that Russia's ability to produce natural gas to the European market is also at stake. So these things combined are affecting oil prices, and they are moving up. Secondly, there's expectation that OPEC should produce more to meet the rising demand. Since 2020, when demand fell because of lockdowns, and last year, 2021, economy started opening up, demand for petroleum products have been rising. And it is for this reason that it's expected that supply will go up. But unfortunately for OPEC, their supply is not enough to meet demand. So in the short term, what is expected is that prices are on the rise. So that is what is expected on the world market. But as a regulator, we want to bring transparency to pricing. And therefore, what we do on a daily basis is to put out the numbers as the trading closes on each particular day. So we have what we call the daily petroleum price indicators, which we publish on our website in a number of daily newspapers for consumers to see how the prices are changing and how they are likely to affect the next pricing window. So that will give you an idea of what to expect.
Abbas Tasunti is head of pricing at the NPA. Peter, if you're still on with us, let me take your final words on this. The projection is that we should be paying more in the coming days. So what's the way out of this?
Yes, we're going to pay more indeed, and the future doesn't look good in terms of the petroleum pricing because the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which is OPEC, are not increasing production. And so what it means is that as demand keeps increasing and production is not increasing, then it will force prices to go up. Like my colleague said concerning, the tension between Russia and Ukraine, for instance. It means that nobody can, actually predict what will happen in the coming months. As a result, government then needs to look at a strategy in order to reduce. Because look, are we saying that if prices today, for instance, it's above $90 per barrel, if it goes to will government continue prices at the market is increasing, and so nothing can be done, and so we also have to bear the cost? No, it can't be possible. Something must be done at a certain time. When situations are tough, like when COVID set in, government has to take decision to be able to alleviate the plight of Ghanaians. The same way in situations like this, there should be a deliberate strategy to be able to reduce the burden because the impact is huge. And unfortunately, those who will be affected are the less vulnerable. The one who doesn't have a car, who has to struggle, go and buy goods or foodstuff from far away and bring it to the city to sell, will be impacted by transport costs. And when it happens like that, prices of goods and services will automatically go up. Who is then affected? It's the ordinary Ghanaian. That is why government needs to sacrifice. Because if your revenue projection is increasing because you are also selling on the world market because prices have increased, it means your revenue that you expect to receive will be more than you projected because prices are increasing. Then what do? You have to sacrifice part of your revenue to reduce the cost that will impact ordinary Ghanaians.
And I'm glad that you're raising this point. Let me just wrap up with you on this. Government is raking in more revenue through the levy. The projection is that they'll be able to get sufficient funds to cushion the consumers. The drivers are a key factor in all of this. Would you advocate that they take off some taxes so that the customers or the consumers could be protected in that regard?
It has been said over and over. Various stakeholders have indicated that in the price build-up, some of the taxes needs to be taken out, like the sanitation, like the... so we are saying that government, unfortunately, is constrained in terms of revenue. And you know what is happening now, where our debt is increasing and unfortunately our revenue is curtailed. So government is actually tight-lipped to say that let's reduce tax. Unfortunately, at this particular time, that is all there is. And other than that, the price stabilization, the price recovery levy should not come back. But government doesn't need money, and that is the reason. And so we've got to the situation whereby the word is sacrifice, and that's all. For government to know that in the short term, 1 or 2 month time, let me sacrifice at some level because you are not losing entirely because your revenue is increasing. So you can then sacrifice at a certain level. That is the only option left for government. Other than that, we always say government needs taxes to generate income for the economy. We always say that the fluctuation of the currency cannot be controlled by government because the factors that pushes the city to go up, government has no control. So what then do we do? Sacrifice. Because government is not ready to do that. That's the unfortunate thing that we are faced with right now.
Peter Tekpe, I'm grateful for your time.